Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Saleh Ismail, and I am one of the class marshals for the class of 2024. The 2024 Albert M. Sacks Paul A. Freund Award for Teaching Excellence recognizes a single faculty member each year for teaching ability, attentiveness to student concerns, and general contributions to student life at Harvard Law School. I am honored to present this award today to Professor Christine Desan. Professor Desan leads the program on the study of capitalism at Harvard University. She has dedicated her career to studying what capitalism means and its ties to economic productivity, as well as empire and the troubling wealth inequality we see today. At HLS, she teaches constitutional law, money, and the making of American capitalism, where students learn about money as a tool of governance and the constitutional struggles that have produced modern capitalism and its monetary hardwiring. Professor Desan's work also extends locally. She's on the steering committee of Massachusetts Public Banking and has co-authored legislation to establish the state's first public bank designed to support local economies and underserved communities across Massachusetts. Beyond her many academic achievements, she remains extremely committed to her students and never shies away from helping students in need. I met her after taking her reading group on Money and Empire, where I saw firsthand her willingness to seriously engage with students' views and challenge us when appropriate. I'd like to end by sharing a quote from a student who nominated Professor Desan, where they remarked, "There were times that I was unsure that my brain was suited for law school, and I relied on Professor Desan's confidence and example to reassure myself that I could get through. I can't imagine what law school would be like without her." Please join me in presenting the Albert M. Sacks Paul A. Freund Award for Teaching Excellence to Professor Christine Desan.
Thank you so much. Congratulations to the amazing class of 2024. I want to start where you did, which was with masks in your 1L classrooms. It's worth thinking about that. You couldn't see each other's faces. It was like a bad sci-fi movie, right? Somehow you transcended that moment. You learned an enormous amount. You built strong bonds with each other, maybe stronger for that adversity. And I would say that given how this ends, that we graduate you, unfortunately, into a very troubled world, it's great that you learned so much and built such strong bonds. There's much work to be done. We desperately need your help. It's no easy task, but we've seen, we've documented, and today we celebrate your enormous capacity, your energy, your work, and your talents. So many, many congratulations. I also want to yes. Second, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. This award means an enormous amount to me. Perhaps more because I've been teaching 30 years. You could say I didn't peak early. But some projects are worth a lifetime effort, and teaching has been that project for me. I'm standing here alone, but I didn't get here by myself. This award recognizes a collective effort. Susan Smith is my co-conspirator at Harvard Law School. As my students know, she is a staff administrator par excellence, a real godsend to the students, a collaborator of many years. Also essential to this effort were an epic team of teaching assistants, from the first teaching assistant I ever had, Nadav Orion Peer, who taught me an enormous amount, to the teaching assistants who were here when you were here. And they were Shanoy Das, Dan Rohde, Matthias Petal, and Ignacio Oriano Garcia. Finally, I am buoyed every day and in soul-saving ways by my family, by my mother, a life force, my sister Suzanne, a brilliant teacher, my brother Paul, a healer, two astonishing sons, David and Jay, and my husband, who is my advisor and my anchor every day, Bob. So this award goes to many people. I have not had most of you as students. There's a large crowd of you out there. It's a bit late to start now. So I thought instead of any kind of lecture, I would tell you what I've learned from you through teaching. 12 things. No, not to worry. Only 3 things. Actually, only 3 things. First takeaway from teaching: build knowledge like a river. I was going to say, I thought about saying build knowledge like a cake, but it didn't have quite as much gravitas. And it's actually, I think, more like a river. So information flows in many forms. We seem to take it in sequentially and cumulatively and weave it together. And we can do that deliberately in the classroom, but also in the courtroom, in the conference room, in organizing efforts. We can integrate streams of material over time. In my classes, it's often history, theory, political economy, doctrine, and it often comes in many forms. So we build in streams of material that we take in as background commentary, and as we take in other kinds of sources, cases, the texts, we diagram the dynamics of institutions. We think about the debates that tie together all those sources. And when we integrate those streams of material, we get something new, something rich. The river that results is different. It's powerful. It's an amalgam that departs from all its ingredients. It has a momentum of its own. Every year, I recognize the river, but every year, the river is also novel, the product of that class. Their insights created something unique. They created new capacity and new understanding. When knowledge becomes an event so exciting, you hang around teaching for 30 years. Second takeaway from the classroom: experiment, always experiment. Every classroom is a lab, or because I'm a teacher, I would put the classroom first. I'd say every lab is a classroom, a space for experimentation. As is, in my experience, every courtroom, every meeting room, every conference, every organizing effort. I've stuck with the classroom, so I'll stick with that as an example here. But in teaching, I've used a swath of different methods. I've tried the Socratic method. I've tried the Socratic method with panels. I've lectured. I've had freewheeling discussions. One year, I institutionalized a method called mandatory volunteering. That was a civil procedure class that included Katie Porter. It was a fascinating class, but the mandatory volunteering part was a bit of a bust. I've written up 100 different exercises. As Sally said, I teach about monetary and financial institutions and how they come about. So one year I thought I should really write an exercise about bimetallism, which was an important, extremely important institution in the 19th century. So I wrote up an exercise about bimetallism, and it sent the entire class over the edge. It is true that Anthony Trollope once wrote, "There are 3 roads to madness: love, ambition, and the study of bimetallism." So we skipped bimetallism for the last few years. Here's what experimentation feels like in the classroom. Every time it feels like a risk. You never know if you've asked the question that will open up the right issue. You never know if you can orchestrate the most effective discussion. You never know if you can build from that discussion to the doctrinal development or the constitutional change you want to illuminate. But while it feels like a risk, and I've had my share of missteps, bimetallism, for example, in fact, the real risk is that other way of teaching was tapped out. That other way of teaching didn't work as well as it should. That other way of teaching left students in the cold. Which brings me back to the places you will go with law. Like the classroom, the point in every courtroom, in every brief, in every organizing effort, The point is to communicate. So I would say experiment, always experiment in the interest of better communicating. Try the change and pack the results into your river of learning. Last takeaway, along with building knowledge like a river, along with experimenting, always experimenting, we might call the final takeaway the McCulloch rule. Remember McCulloch? John Marshall was right about one thing. As my students know, I have some reservations about many of his opinions, but he was right that the means are where the action is. When he empowered Congress to use all necessary means, he gave Congress a power that he called comprehensive. And that's right, right? In fact, our lives happen in the means, even and ever on our way to the ends. The means are what we practice, the means are what we experience, the means are where we live. I've been obsessed with means for a long time. I got my start at HLS teaching civil procedure because civil procedure was the means of resolving disputes. I then moved to studying money and banking because they are the means we use to capture value and to mobilize resources. The means matter enormously, and so does their design, the design of the means. Teaching is also a means, and its design matters enormously. So one last example. In law school, I hated the Socratic method. And then I started teaching. And I still hated the Socratic method. I tried it for several years. I tinkered with it. I added panels. I mixed in group calls. I never really warmed to it. As I thought about it, I realized that the Socratic method, as a means, taught a particular set of lessons. To think on your feet, that's got to be good. But also to respond when spoken to impute the answer and maybe the advantage to the authority in the room, to distill learning into a bilateral exchange. I realized as I thought about it that I'm not so interested in teaching those lessons. I don't think they're the most important for lawyers, or at least there are other lessons that are as important. The lessons I was interested in teaching were to choose your moment, to take the initiative rather than answer when spoken to use your opportunity to develop those answers rather than seeking to appease the authority in the room. And rather than distilling learning into a bilateral exchange, I wanted to use the capacity of the classroom as a group, a set of minds like no other, to generate the richest debate we could manage. I'm not sure what to call the teaching method that resulted, maybe orchestrated discussion, maybe crowdsourced argument, maybe the river way, along with the lines of my metaphor appropriate for Boston. In that method, students participate in response to many prompts. They contribute individually and in concert. We then collect the results and we attend to them, the product of many minds, a product that no one mind could have produced, but that we as a brainstorming, challenging, curious, driven, and very different set of lawyers could create. If what I say strikes you as sacrilegious, don't worry, the Socratic method is alive and well at Harvard Law School. It's just not my chosen means. So the McCulloch rule is that the means matter. They are where we live, and we should choose the means to comport with our values. In fact, I suspect I would go so far as to say that as we design the means, we design the ends. And as we redesign the means, we redesign the ends. I think that's true in life somehow. It's also true at the university level. I hope for the peaceful management of our current divisions, one that invites all voices to be heard, supports speech, and diminishes vituperation and punishment. Perhaps as we redesign our practice, we redesign the world. Thank you again for the privilege of teaching you and for the privilege of learning with you. It has meant the world to me.